I started the year with a simple question: what is life?
I know you've spent so much time in prisons, but was there anything that surprised you? If I could give you a blank pass, who would you love to meet? Tell us just a little bit about your challenges becoming a mom.
It felt like such a personal failure.
So many of us don't love what we do, but what would have surprised that young woman who was hosting a teen magazine show?
If you can, leave your comfort zone.
Lisa Ling, good to see you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I have followed your career for many, many years, so thanks. I hear you're in Northern California?
I am. You're kind of a Bay Area person, if I remember correctly. I've got you like pegged as Sacramento or something.
Yeah, I wish I could say it was the Bay Area, but no.
You were way too honest for your own good. I love that. You're not counting Sacramento. That's hot. Lisa Ling is an award-winning investigative journalist, best known for her work on The View, The Oprah Winfrey Show, and Our America with Lisa Ling. Her new project, This Is Life with Lisa Ling, on CNN takes a deeper look into some of the unconventional communities and subcultures in our country. Women who commit murder, the effects of online pornography and how it's shaping a generation, how the power of Islam is reshaping lives in the Black community, and most recently, the prison population problem in the United States. Well, I loved your prison and prep special. It was one of those things where prepping for this, I was gonna watch it because I was supposed to watch it. And then all of a sudden I had people in my life start to come around because they saw me watching it and they started watching it. So thank you for doing that. That was such an interesting and thoughtful piece. I know you spent so much time in prisons, but was there anything that surprised you about this story in this prison?
There always is a difference when you visit a facility where there is a lot of programming available to the incarcerated people. This is a facility that houses more inmates serving life sentences than any other facility in the state of California, which means that these are guys who are there for doing some very bad things. But in the programs that I visited, so many of the men had been incarcerated for more than a decade and had been devoted to the programming. And so the candor, the remorse, the wisdom, the recognition of trauma that so many of them had experienced as children that led them on this path of destruction was really, really powerful. And I just think that there's so much to be learned from men like these who went through this extraordinary transformation inside.
One of the things that struck me that was unusual was the candor. Did you get any sense that people felt that they were putting themselves at risk being truly that candid?
This was the first time I heard inmates actually say, I killed someone. I took a life. And not only did they say that, but one of the inmates, for example, said that I didn't just take a life, I shattered a family and a life. Yeah. And he writes to his victim on a weekly basis. He said, because I took his life, it is up to me to keep his legacy alive. Oh, Carlos, I get emotional even just recounting that moment. And that was just one of so many. There's so many unknowns that are happening in the world. You know, girls generally are more communicative. They express their emotions more widely. Boys are so often told, don't cry, don't feel, don't express your emotion, just man up. And if you've experienced any kind of trauma, a divorce of your parents, a death of a parent, a car accident, what have you, and it continues to go unresolved, it can manifest itself in some very negative ways. And I think that's one of the reasons why we have such a booming prison population. I mean, we're talking about millions of people who've probably experienced pretty significant trauma in their lives.
How did you become a journalist? That was not, I assume, a foregone conclusion based on your mom or your dad or your grandparents, was it?
Definitely not. In fact, if it were up to them, they would have probably wanted me to pursue more traditional career paths, like a lot of good Asian kids. But I didn't exactly show the most prowess for, math and science. So I went in another direction. But no, growing up in Carmichael, California, my parents weren't around a lot. They were working, they were divorced when I was very young, and the TV was always on in my house. And so I used to have these fantasies of being part of the TV because I thought, well, if I can get on TV, maybe I can have a better life one day. And I got hired to host a teen magazine show that was based out of Sacramento. And then I had this audition for a news program that was seen in middle schools and high schools across the country called Channel 1 News. In fact, Anderson Cooper from CNN was one of my colleagues. And even though this show was only seen in schools, it sent its correspondents all over the world to cover stories. So in my late teens and early 20s, I was traveling to cover the civil war in Afghanistan and Algeria, covering stories about the democracy movements in Iran and China, covering stories about the drug wars throughout South America. And so that global perspective that I was able to acquire as a very young person who would have otherwise never had a chance to travel to these places was transforming for me. And so my desire went from just wanting to be on TV to have a better life to developing this burning desire to tell stories and communicate the things that I was seeing in the world to a wider audience.
You're very blessed, Lisa, in that you love what you do. So many of us don't love what we do, but it's so clear to me that you love what you do. And it's so clear that you are fulfilled by it and nurtured by it. And you said your senses come alive. Most of us born, live, and die within 500 miles of the same place, right? That's, for most of the world, that's kind of your life. And you're an unusual person in that not only have you gone beyond 500 miles, but you've gone, who knows how many miles around the globe. But what 2 or 3 things would have surprised that young woman who was hosting a teen magazine show and was kind of just starting in her journey?
For me, what I would tell my younger self who struggled with identity because I was one of the only Asian kids in my community, I would say to her that the world is an incredible place and that diversity and exploring different worlds and different cultures is not only fascinating, but it is soul enriching. And for me, when I talk to young people, that's the first thing I always try and convey to them. Like, if you can leave your comfort zone, if you could travel, even if it's not to another country, but to leave your comfort zone, to me, that is the best education that you could possibly ever conceive of. There's just so much value in doing that.
Tell me about a person you haven't met yet, that if I could give you a blank pass to have dinner or lunch or whatever you wanted with someone alive or dead, who would you love to meet?
Ooh, Carlos, that's difficult. I mean, look, I've always been really intrigued by, people who have sort of dictatorial tendencies. So, I would really want to converse with someone like a Kim Jong-un of North Korea. Because for me, I've always just been really intrigued by how someone could exhibit the kind of behavior that they do. I mean, quite frankly, on that note, I would love to sit down with the current president of the United States, the outgoing president, because I do think that, again, while I have found his behavior to be absolutely incorrigible about most things, there are some things that I am really curious about to know about his upbringing. And I don't know that he's really talked very much about expectations of him as a boy. I'm always intrigued by those kinds of people.
What have you learned about love in this life? And what piece of advice would you give to someone else? None of us are perfect on it, but to the extent that you do have a good piece of advice to share on love, what have you learned? What would you share with someone else?
Love doesn't always have to be that romantic love. Be open to experiencing those loving moments where not only you are willing to share and be vulnerable, that if someone is willing to share and be vulnerable with you, you respect that and honor that, and acknowledge that it might have been hard for them to share that with you. But, for me, Carlos, if we could all do this more often, acknowledge those loving moments, I think we'd be a lot better off. I know we're going through a really challenging time right now, but this will end. We will overcome this at some point. And I just want to encourage people to go out and express loving moments of yourself, and be open to people expressing loving moments to you, because I think those are really affirming for everyone. That's what love means to me.
I have to finish by asking you a little bit about becoming a mom, which I know was not always the easiest thing, and I know you've been very generous in talking about it openly, and we're starting to hear more and more people follow your path and share, and I think that's of incredible value to lots of families who are wrestling with this, sometimes quietly. Would you tell us just a little bit about your challenges with that and how that ultimately ended up, and what, if anything, you wish you had known earlier?
I think that it's such an important conversation to have, because I as a girl, I never had that desire to have kids. I didn't have that biological need. And then when I got into my 30s and I married my husband, for the first time in my life, I've always just been so career driven. I thought, I love this man. I think I'd like to try and have a child with him. And then we had 2 miscarriages. And it was for someone like who's so type A as me, it felt like such a personal failure that it had happened. And then I came to realize, and I started speaking out about it pretty early on, that miscarriages are so widespread, and I often get very offended when people say like, well, you have this biological clock, and if you want to have kids, you need to start thinking about it. But the fact of the matter is, we do have a biological clock. Like when I say I would get offended, like when I was in my 20s, I hated when people would say things like that to me. But now, having experienced 3 miscarriages, I do tell young women, if you have any desire whatsoever to have kids at some point in your life, knowing that you are on this career path and you feel so strongly about your career, I would start at least just thinking about maybe freezing your eggs as kind of an insurance policy, because you just never know what's going to happen in life. You don't know if you're going to have a partner when you are most fertile. And it's something that I never thought I would be trying to convey to young women, but I think it's important that we feel comfortable enough to be able to tell women that if this is something that they desire, try to employ measures to avoid, because the older you get, the higher the risk there is of miscarriage. So I think a smart insurance policy is when you're in your 20s, if you have the resources to be able to freeze your eggs, it's not a bad idea.
Favorite book?
My favorite book is called Genghis Khan and the Making of the Modern World.
If the journalism thing had not worked out, do your sliding doors, what do you think would have happened?
I've always had the utmost respect for social workers. It's not out of the realm of possibility that I may, study social work at some point in my life. Because again, that ability to engage with people and understand people and help people on that note has always been really important to me. So I would probably say somewhere in that world of social work.
What's your karaoke song?
I'm a classic rock junkie, so I would have to say like some Night Ranger, Sister Christian. Maybe some like AC/DC, You Shook Me All Night Long. Like, there's a reason why I have this hair, it's for headbanging. And
that is too good to be true. I love that. Lisa, thank you so much for coming. I'm super grateful. And I hope when everything gets healthier, I hope it does get healthier for all of us. When it gets healthier, I hope we can do it in person.
I would love that. And I would love a big, like, Carlos Watson hug.
You got it. You got two of them coming your way. Hey, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Lisa Ling. What a good person. What an interesting person. We need more of her. It's funny, on this show, I've often said that there are a whole layer of people in this world who kind of are our filters. They shape how we see the world. And I want to make sure they're the kinds of people who have big minds and big hearts, and Lisa's one of them. I'm happy when I hear that Lisa's one of the arbiters of what we see and how we think about it. I hope she gets a bigger and bigger role in this world. Doggone it, she may come get this chair. Hey, I hope you enjoyed it a lot. If you did, think about subscribing to this show. Definitely tell your friends. And the podcast, this is a good one to try. Enjoy.
You